All right, can I just start by thanking, well, React Native Europe, React Native London, sorry, for organizing this, because I saw them, doing all the tricky setup and everything to have this both in person and via Zoom. And wow, that's pretty amazing. So thank you so much, and thanks so much, Immediate Media, for also hosting the event, because um, I asked for a smaller lectern and they provided, because this was definitely like, no. um, I was not as tall as their expectations, I guess. But yeah, bit of introductions. I'm Alex. Hi, I'm a tech lead at BAM. We're based in Paris and we develop mobile apps, mostly in React Native. And we're part of the Theodo group, so we work with Theodo in London as well on React Native stuff. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to hear about performance, because this is basically what I talk about these days. And actually, why do I care about this? Well, many reasons, but I like this one. Let me tell you a short story. So at some point we had this client and they wanted us to develop both web app and mobile apps. So we're like, cool, React developers, we're going to do it in React Native plus React Web. Cool, that's going to be awesome. And they had actually an amazing set of technical standards for the project. So on the web app, they required us to have a Lighthouse score above 90, initial time to render under like a few hundred milliseconds, and some other metrics. Like, that was really nice. On the mobile apps, they told us their requirement was it should not lag. That's it. And wow, that's a bit frustrating. Like, it feels like measuring performance for mobile apps is not as mainstream as for the web, and it's kind of annoying. And when you Google that, okay, what makes an app performant? What can you do to make your app performant? Usually you can see this video. So the video, I'm not going to show it, but it's in the slides. They explain why the holy grail of performance should be that your app should run at 60 frames per second. So for example, if you scroll your device, your app is responsible for being able to show 60 images of your app per second, so that it feels smooth. So why 60? Well, it's fast enough for the human eye, usually. There's less perceived benefits in higher numbers, although that could be arguable. And one important thing is that the frame rate should be constant. So if your app is like displaying 60 frames per second, but suddenly it shows like only 50, you could be like, 50 is close to 60. But actually, usually the human eye is very nice at spotting issues like that. The question we could ask ourselves, because this is React Native London, is this true for React Native apps? Well, yes, this is true, because React Native is essentially native. You have JS driving native components. So we also need to aim for 60 frames per second. But another question is this enough? Well, no, because we also have the JS thread. So spoiler alert, this is not entirely true with the new re-architecture. So spoiler on the next talk. But essentially what happens if you, for example, you use your app, I'm clicking a button on my app, the native component is gonna, detect that click, and it's gonna need to send it to the JS side, right? And then the JS side, if you have, for example, a touchable opacity, wrapping this native component and driving this native component, you're gonna have an on-press. And so on the JS side, well, you're supposed to process the click event from the native side and execute what you put in the on-press. The issue there is that if the JS thread is too busy, well, you have only one. So if it's too busy, it's not going to be able to do anything. So it's not going to be able to respond to the click. So actually, let's show this just now. Whoop, disappeared again. Sorry. Up. Let me hide it again. So if I share the screen of my phone, with neat little tool by Jenny Motion. There you go. Up, there's my phone. So I implemented a very, very fancy app. Yeah, it's beautiful. Design made by me. I'm not only a developer. No, I'm kidding. It's yeah. Well, and yeah, it's well. Let me quit it actually to just restart it. But as you might have guessed already by seeing the text, wait, where was it? Oh yeah, example. Apparently my alphabetical order is messing. I'm not so good with the alphabet, but yeah, example is here, and yeah, just the standard React stuff, not so fancy actually. I click me, and you see I've been clicked 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Okay. So I have also a button there, kill.js, which begs to be clicked. What it does is it calculates. I mean, if you're curious, it calculates the Fibonacci suite recursively up until like 42. So it's yeah, that's why it kills the JS thread, because it's doing it on the JS thread. So let's see what happens if I click it and I try click me. Like, you don't see it, but I'm clicking like crazy. I'm clicking click me. Nothing happens. And yeah, there you go. You can see I've been clicked 28 times. So just to show that, of course, this is the stuff we want to avoid, because your app could be running at 60 FPS, but if the JS thread is dead, your app is not going to be responsive, because a lot of stuff happened on the JS side. So one thing to know is that, well, you don't see it so well, but on the top right, you have the performance monitor, which is quite nice. You have UI FPS. I mean, it says 59.8 due to how it's implemented in React Native. Actually, it should be 60. And if I do kill.js, you'll notice that the JS goes to -2. Well, you don't notice it because you don't have like amazing super eyes, and it's very small. But this is also why we have created this plugin. Wait, no, not this one, spoiler. Which actually does that for you over a period of time and draws a graph. So if I do kill.js, if I zoom out a little bit, because this is big, yeah, you can see that the JS stayed dead for a while. And cool, as a bonus, where we were talking about Lighthouse score, it prints it out as well. So yeah, you can see that I clicked kill.js just when it goes down. You can see that the JS FPS is going to 0, and this is definitely what we want to avoid, as well as the UI FPS being at 60, to avoid the app being unresponsive and laggy. But this talk is not entirely about that. So yeah, so React Native Performance Monitor and the plugin that goes with it. I think it might not fit all use cases. So tonight I want to experiment a little bit with you guys. Because, like, I don't know, well, first, I mean, your app might actually be running at 60 FPS, but be struggling to do so. Like, if you're displaying your app at 60 FPS, but your phone is heating up, like, I'm not going to call your app performant, because, well, it's going to use all the resources on the phone, so it's not so great. Also, a fun thing you might want to do, what if you want to compare your app's performance with your competitors? You probably don't have their code. So installing Flipper plugins, or even if it's not React Native, like, how do you what do you do? And also, what if you want to ensure that you have no performance regression if you do a big architecture? So as I was saying, Fabric changes a lot of things. Actually, it's going to be lighter on the JS thread, but some other stuff might happen. So you might want to check, if you want to check before Fabric and with Fabric, like, this method of testing might not be right, because maybe the JS thread is going to be better, but maybe some other stuff that don't appear in the measures before have become worse. So what I really like to do, very simply, is measuring CPU usage. Why? Because on Android, and I like to measure on Android because, let's face it, Android devices on average are slower than iOS devices, just because, well, most of them are cheap. And to make them cheap, of course, you don't have as good CPUs as iOS. And so, yeah, measuring CPU usage is easy. on Android, as I will show. It's completely objective. It doesn't depend on technology. Like you could, compare React Native with non-React Native apps, or if you're doing a complete React architecture, you could compare Fabric versus non-Fabric. Well, what's the CPU usage? And also, well, in React Native, what's kind of nice is I was saying we should avoid 0.js FPS. Actually, it directly correlates to basically the JS thread is using 100% CPU usage. So it's using it for a while, and that's why it cannot respond to the events, because it's just killing one CPU. And since we have one thread, it can only use one CPU. So by one CPU, for example, this phone has 8 cores. So technically it can do 8 things in parallel, but the JS can only be one thing in parallel. So if it uses 1 core in total, then the app's not responsive. So this is what we want to avoid. And yeah, showtime. So I was saying that I wanted to show some stuff and experiment with you guys. Let me go back to this. And maybe I should zoom in a little bit for our friends on the Zoom. Yeah, that should be fine, I hope. And with Android, you get something called ADB. It's likely you've used it before. It's called the Android Debug Bridge. But basically, it's a set of commands that you can run on your phone, and you have a lot of stuff like this. Actually, if you run in a React Native app, React Native Run Android or Yarn Android, a lot of stuff are run for you with ADB. But for example, you have ADB installed. You can, install an APK if you're too lazy to rebuild your app and you already have it built. But what's really interesting is, well, Android actually runs on Linux. So you have ADB shell, which opens a shell inside my phone here. And it's kind of cute. I can run comments like, I don't know, well, what's, I guess, the most famous comment everybody knows, I guess, echo. Hello, React Native London. And then, it just, basically, I'm in the shell of my device, and I'm actually echoing React Native London inside the device. Well, obviously the output is passed back to the computer. I can do all sorts of things like pwd while I'm at the root. So yeah, ls to list off all of the folders. And also, as a convenience, I can do ADB shell ls, for example, to execute the comments. So for example, I'm using ZSH, so it's kind of nice to have the history of comments. It's kind of cool. And yeah, you also have a lot of stuff actually available in ADB shell. You have some stuff that are very particular to the Android world. For example, if you want to see the Wi-Fi password and type it in your phone, you can just do this. Whoop, if I can get the phone back. Yep, there it is. Yeah, it's hard for me to not show just this one. Oop, hello. Yeah, okay, I'm here. So I don't know if I want to search things to do in London, because I'm in London for the weekend. I just types in. You saw that I didn't type in with my hands. Then I don't know, some fun stuff also if you want to. So ADB shell input, you can just type it in and it will show a lot of stuff that you can do with it, and you don't necessarily need to have an extensive end-to-end tool to do that stuff like Appium or Detox. Sometimes it can be easier. I like this one. Like you can actually scroll. I think it's fun. But okay, enough chit chat. What's really interesting here is that if it runs on Linux, so on Linux you have some comments related to performance, and this is what interests us tonight. Namely, you have PS and top. So if let me keep my phone actually. Top is really neat. If I do ADB shell top to run top on my device, this is awful because this is too big. Whoop. Right, let me do it again. ADB shell top, still too big. Okay, this is not too bad. Whoa. Okay, needs to be a bit smaller, I guess. Sorry about that. Okay, third time's the charm. ADB shell top. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Okay, hopefully not too hard to see. I see people flinching their eyes in the first rank, so probably it's too small. But there's a lot of stuff happening on that screen. On the right side, you have the name of processes on your phone. And there are stuff that look like bundle IDs of apps. For example, I have com.twitter.android going over the top at some point. Apparently, basically, Twitter is doing some stuff in the background that I'm not aware of. And you have CPU usage here. And basically, whoa. Okay, so it's a bit weird when I'm zooming in. Huh. It's gonna keep doing that, isn't it? Basically, it ranks. This is horrible. It ranks. We're not gonna stay too long on the screen. I reassure you. Yeah, I will try again. It ranks processes by CPU usage, and this is basically what we want, right? Because it just outputs here the CPU every 3 seconds, CPU usage over the last 3 seconds of any app. If 3 seconds is too short, we can just do .d 0.5, and it's going to input it every 500 milliseconds. So, for example, if I take my, yeah, that's going to be tricky. Okay, I'm going to try smaller again. You're going to have to trust me on what I say if you can't read. If I take my example app from previously, I do kill.js. You see com.example actually appearing at the top. And, whoa, Facebook is, we'll get to that later. What the? That's crazy. Yeah, if I do kill.js, it's using about 100% CPU. It's using more than that. You see that, I mean, you might not see, but the numbers go a bit higher than 100. It goes to like 120 or something. This is because top actually says that my phone has 8 cores, so it can go up to 800%. It's 100% per core. So when I do kill.js, I have the JS thread taking 100%, and there's still like 5 or 6% CPU percent being used by, well, usually the display, like the main thread to display those, because it's still displaying some stuff when I click kill.js. And yeah, this is very much what we want. With a comment, then you parse it, and you have CPU usage on your phone, on your app. But we could go a bit further because it would be nicer to know if, so for example, if my app is taking 100% CPU, there is a big difference between my app taking 12.5 on 8 cores, because 12.5 times 8 equal 100. So it's taking like a little bit of the 8 cores versus it's taking 100 on 1 core. Let me say that again. So it's better if I'm taking like only a little bit on each cores versus 100 on 1 core. Why? Because, for example, if it's taking 100 on 1 core, it means that it cannot do more. Like, it means that this thread is using too much on a thread, just like the JS thread. It's using 100 and it cannot do anything more. So probably there's something going on in the app, and it's blocked, and there's something weird happening. So it'd be nice if we could see threads, and we can. So that's cool. With -h, like threads, I don't really know why -h, but there you go. It's even crazier than before. But on the right side, you see all the threads, but you see all of the threads of all of the apps of your phone. So that's kind of crazy. You can see actually top at the top, which is fun because this actually is yeah, measuring performance can be performance heavy. That's kind of weird thing. It's actually taking a lot. But if you just want to get the threads for your app, you can do .p and select the process ID. So each of the process have a process ID. And if you're like me and you don't know how to get the process ID of your app, like if you want to do anything with ADB, you just Google ADB do this on, and usually it works. Like you can do pretty much anything. So turns out that it's ADB shall pid off your bundle ID. So my bundle ID is com.example. I do ADB shell pid of com.example, and I get the process ID of my app. And then if I do -p of the process ID of my app, I should get only the threads for my app. If I do kill.js now, I have mqt.js at the top, which you might have guessed is the JS thread. If I do kill.js again, yeah, still at the top at 100. It's actually going at 102, so that's kind of weird. I don't really know what's up with that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So essentially, you could just parse this output and you have a performance monitoring tool in production. Oh yeah, actually, I wanted to show something, like just to show that this is in production. So Facebook, because it was kind of acting up before. Facebook. So these are the threads for Facebook, and some crazy stuff is happening. But for example, if we go to the marketplace is React Native. Oh damn, the marketplace is React Native, so you don't really see it. But if I scroll, the MQTGS should get a bit higher, because to be honest, I think they have really badly implemented their list. I think some memo in there probably is missing, because yeah, this is an S10. This is not a bad phone, but I'm just scrolling and yeah, it gets up to almost 100. Yeah, 100. There we go. Remember what I was talking about? Like, we don't want 0 JS FPS equal. We don't want 100% JS CPU on the JS thread. Well, this is what's happening, and yeah, we don't want that. So essentially, you could just parse this output and you can measure performance in any production app. So I've done that and made it into a Flipper plugin so that you don't have to do it yourself. So I thought now we could have a little bit of fun with it. And I'm not exactly sure it's published yet, because I published it this morning and apparently it takes a while. But anyway, I'll give you the links at the end. If I click here, auto detect, for example, Facebook, I can just click start measuring, and it's going to do essentially the same as before. And oops, some actually test string here that I left. Ooh. Okay, this is the first time I'm speaking in public in like 3 years, and this happens. Damn. All right. And you can also see the JS thread here going like super up. But if I do stop measuring, I can also see all of the threads here. And of course, like if I want to have some fun, I can just select, for example, I don't know, Facebook.katana render thread, and I can display all of the threads I want. And you can clearly see here on the graph that, I mean, it's going to 100 for the MQTGS, so it's really not good, and it's just doing that. And by the way, this is definitely a flat list, because when I do this, you can see some white. Since all the virtualization happens on the JS side, the JS side is dead. It doesn't know what to display anymore, and the JS side is like the scrolling continues, but then the JS side cannot keep up to say, hey, you should display this. So I asked on Twitter what were some some apps that we could check. And I've heard about Coinbase, so we could take a look at Coinbase. And yeah, no suspense. I don't have any money on Coinbase. Like I'm sure you're all expecting. Yeah, it's 0. Yeah. Auto detect. So up, start measuring. And there we go. So here, kind of hard to see, but I'm not doing anything on the app. It's running 89% total CPU usage. I don't really know what's up with that. If we do stop measuring, we can check below. Okay, definitely not the JS thread. So here, if React Native was detected, it's just yeah, it's going to display the JS thread automatically here. But here it's not very high, so we could check what's happening here and order by average CPU usage of all the threads. Well, without knowing the code of the app at this point, it's kind of hard to know what's happening. So Coinbase.Android, I have no idea why this happens, but basically, no, it's definitely not like ADB shell top prints out the same. So just a note, I'm not actually parsing top output. Top actually reads from /proc/something files on Android. If the code is open source, if you want to check it out. And I do the same basically. And in there you have the name, but I guess the name cannot be bigger than, I don't know, many characters. And so that's why sometimes, well, it's supposed to be Coinbase.Android, but sometimes, yeah, it's different. So usually the threads associated with your bundle ID is the main thread. It's the one responsible to display frames. So if this one is going at 100%, probably your app is not going to run at 60 FPS. But he also has a thread called the render thread, which is supposed to be dispatching dispatching comments to the GPU to make some heavy calculations, typically animations. So I'm not really sure what's going on. Oh, and the other one that's quite high is MQT native modules. This is by default, if you have a bridge, a native bridge, it's going to run in this thread. So it looks like on the JS side, nothing much is happening, but it seems like they have a bridge doing some stuff. Obviously, if we're not Coinbase, we can't really know. And it looks like they have something taking, like, I don't know, an animation, or maybe it could also be a web view. I had some bad experiences with web view taking a lot of stuff on the render thread. And I think if we do the same, just like Facebook, let's see, start measuring. Okay, let me reset, start measuring. And I started to go down. It's pretty smooth, but it's getting kind of, wait, let me just get the render thread all the time. Yeah, the render thread, which is one of the threads responsible for the 60 FPS, is starting to be really in trouble. And you have here like actually processes with high CPU usage detected, which you definitely don't want. Well, yeah, here the render thread is dead, and actually, well, it's probably looking laggy here, but it's also looking laggy here. So the app is actually not displaying at 60 FPS. My guess would be that those articles are maybe web views or something. I don't actually know. Any guess is as good as mine at this point. But yeah, I mean, something could be optimized here. Yeah, let me do quickly, maybe. Oh, I can do also Uber Eats, because someone talked about Uber Eats, but see, auto detect. Oop, nope, Uber Eats, yeah. Start measuring. Oh, you can see my address, cool. Actually, there's no JS thread. So this is not React Native. I think Uber Eats mentioned at some point that they have a restaurant app in React Native, which I haven't tried, but this one is not React Native. And actually, I could try the same. It gets also quite slow at some point, so it doesn't, you know, be it React Native or native, you can have performance issues or even Flutter, actually. I think it's the French train company. They built their app in Flutter, and they actually have lag on iOS. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a technology problem. And just to, someone on Twitter mentioned also, he was the first one to respond. And oh yeah, all about this one. I thought it would be a good competitor to Facebook because it's a social network. I don't really know it, but there's a list, lots of media, so we could try it out to see if it's better than the Facebook list. So let's see the JS thread. So the JS thread goes up, so I think it's a flat list. Oop. Oh damn, that's. Oh crap. I hope he's not watching. That's awkward. This did not happen during my test. Maybe it's something with ADB, etc. I don't know. Wait. I think, yeah, I'm gonna reload. Electron app. Okay, let's go at it again. Start measuring. Okay, there you go. And yeah, I'm sorry. I prepared this and it was not doing that. Like I wanted to say actually that the scrolling was kind of nice and the CPU was not going up so much. I don't know what happened. I was gonna say like they're a nice Facebook competitor. Maybe there's something to be done there. But yeah, basically, yeah, some stuff happened. I don't know. I'm gonna reset, clear it. Yeah, so I mean, I think, yeah, let's stop with the demo. And just getting back to the slide, this means pretty much we can do anything. I think we can objectively compare framework performance, and this is something that I want to do because I've been asked this question a lot of time, like, what is better, Flutter, native, React Native? So this is something we're going to do at BAM, the company where I work, to have a nice comparison. So CPU is one thing. There's also FPS, RAM usage, and other stuff that will come into play. You can have E2E performance testing. Like basically, so the thing that I've done on Flipper, it uses a another package that you could just use on a CLI tool, or you could just use, I don't know, if you run an Appium test or a detox test, you just pull the process and then you could have something that just, you know, checks the average CPU usage over I don't know, something you do in the app. Be sure to always average it because performance measures are not deterministic, but you could basically compare and do stuff like this. Probably more on this also in the coming month. And to be honest, I feel like Lighthouse for mobile apps is getting closer because if you can do this, then basically just put like Appium. So for those of you who don't know, I kind of like Appium. It's end-to-end testing tool. What's nice about Appium is you can put any app in there. You don't need to install anything. It can test, click, and do stuff in any app. So could imagine something like you pass an APK to a tool. It's going to run some random Appium stuff, clicking, scrolling, etc., measuring CPU usage, and it could attribute a score. So that's my dream, but hopefully, you know, also more on that later. It's going to be a fun year, I think, for performance, at least for us at BAM, but I hope you'll also be part of this because I think performance is just, we don't measure performance enough. So if you want to hear more about that, you can follow me on Twitter. There is also the repository, but I will share better links on the event, and I guess there is an event page, right? Yeah, and on the Twitter. So yeah, that's it for me, but I think it's time for Q&A now.